It is a huge honor to be sitting here in Glasgow with my buddy Ashley Latter of ashleylatter.com. That's Ashley, ASHLEYLATTER. Ashley, in 1997, two dentists took part on Ashley's Ethical Sales and Communication program, and since then, over 10,500 delegates have now taken this program worldwide. This program is legendary in the UK dental world, and it's probably the most sought-after program in dentistry today. Ashley has delivered this program in 14 different countries, including Estonia, Serbia, Canada, and 5 times in the United States. Apart from the Ethical Sales and Communications program, Ashley delivers other programs, including creating a world-class patient journey, creating a high-performance team, high-impact presentation skills program, and reception program, how to turn telephone inquiries into appointments. Ashley also works with a very forward group of dentists and orthodontists on the Serious Players Club, which is an entrepreneur group. Ashley is the author of Helping Patients to Say Yes, Don't Wait for the Tooth Fairy, How to Communicate Effectively, and Create the Perfect Patient Journey, and You're Worth It. Communicate your fees with self-confidence and achieve the income your services deserve. He also wrote a chapter in Dental Masters and has written hundreds of articles. In 2014, Ashley got voted number 12 in the top 150 most influential people in the UK dentistry, and he was the only overseas speaker at the 100th Dutch Dental Conference, which is opened by the King of Holland. Ashley has now delivered over 23,000 hours of business coaching to the dental industry all over the world. Simply, he is the best at getting dentists and their teams to communicate with their patients, which results in a world-class patient journey, more patients saying yes to treatment plans, and increased profits for the practice. You always talk about the 8 steps to a perfect consultation. Where did you want to start today? Because I already know what the Americans are saying. This is 81% of this audience Americans. By the way, Dental Town is in Phoenix. So Dental Town and my dental office and my house are right there in South Phoenix. Everyone calls it all Watuki, but it's part of Phoenix. But anyway, there's a big casino there, and we put on courses right next to that. I would, if you're ever interested, I'd love to bring you down, have you put on your 2-day program. But here's what you're dealing with in America. Every dentist is going to say, I didn't go to 8 years of dentistry to sell. I don't sell. I'm not a used car salesman.
Yeah.
So I'm not selling dentistry. Yeah. I'm the best dentist that ever lived.
Yeah.
When I die, the newspaper will say, dentistry is now dead. I'm dead, and I don't sell. What do you say to dentists who think selling is a 4-letter word?
Yeah, a great question. I get asked all the time the same question. You see, what I teach, Howard, I don't teach hard-faced sales techniques, something that you might expect or seen in the past in a car showroom. What ethical sales is about really is, would you agree that every single day we're all selling ideas to every human being? Whether the receptionist she's on the phone, whether a patient goes into that practice or the practice next door, will all depend on how well the receptionist answers the telephone or not. It's all down to her. Everyone, the practice manager, she's selling ideas every single day. The dentist is selling ideas every day. Whether the patient goes ahead with a treatment or not will all depend on how well the dentist is able to communicate in a way that excites the patient. So the dentist is selling ideas every single day, whether health or whether it's a treatment plan, they're selling ideas. And what I teach people is that really ethical selling is doing 4 things really, really well. And the 4 things that you've got to do really well is you've got to have that really building rapport with the right type of patient. And the right type of patient is someone who's interested in what you've got to offer, who's interested in what you offer, health and treatment-wise. And the first key point there, obviously, is the building rapport, because without rapport, nothing's possible. Once you've built great rapport with the patient, then you're asking really good questions to find out what their problems are, what their solution, what they're looking for. If they're coming in for a certain treatment, maybe short-term ortho or implant treatment, whatever the case is, you're finding out what their problems actually is or what impact it's having on a day-to-day basis. Once you've done that, then you're providing a solution. And you're providing a solution in a language that the patient understands and, of course, gets excited about. And one of the things that dentists tend to do is talk too technical or complicate things. And what we teach dentists to do is how to communicate to patients in a way that excites the patient in wanting to go ahead with the treatment. Now, once you find out what the problems are, once you give them the right solution or solutions, they turn around to the patient and say, what do you think? How does it sound? Is this the sort of thing you're looking for? And hopefully the patient comes back and says, yes, that's exactly what I want. You've nailed it. And like, when can I start? And now you've got what I call commitment, where the patient is buying off you as opposed to you having to sell to them. Does that make sense? So it's all about doing 4 things really well: building rapport, asking questions, providing really good solutions, and then, gaining commitment from the patient. But, you can be the best dentist in the world. You can be great at what you do. You can have a passion for what you do. You can love what you do. But if you can't communicate what you do in a way that excites the patients, then you'll never deliver the dentistry that you love to do and what patients want. And I've spoken to, and you've probably spoken to, hundreds of dentists in your time who've bought kits, who've bought all the technical materials and have never got out of the box. And what I do is help them get out of the box.
So Ashley, I always wonder how much of the success of dentists that really can sell dentistry is they're just born with that personality versus how much of that can actually be trained?
Yeah, good question. I've never ever, I don't know if you, Howard, been in past the hospital which says, with a big banner outside which says, salesperson born today weighing 7 pounds 6 ounces. And the likelihood of it's going to happen, it's never going to happen. And it's a great question. And often when I go out socializing with my friends who see what I do, and they all turn around and say, well, you're either born with it, And I completely disagree. You can make this, you can be made. And the reason why I say that is I've got, thousands of success stories. But I'm just thinking out loud of the very, very first dentist who came on my program, my 2-day course nearly 20 years ago. And he was a very, very shy, reserved dentist. His name's Neil. And, I remember him.
Neil DeGracio?
Yeah. A very good friend of mine, Neil.
Thanks, Ryan.
And, if you met him now, 20 years later, he's actually taken several of my courses over this period of time, and he's done lots of things with me. But now he's a clinical director for one of the, the number one dental corporates in the United Kingdom, and he's placing something like 450 implants a year, and he's using my communication skills that he's developed in my program over this 20-year period. But if you would have met him 20 years ago, he didn't have anywhere near the confidence and the communication skills that he's got now. So, and I'm the living proof as well. I remember when I was 20, chatting a girl up or speaking to girls, I'd run a mile. I often wish I had the confidence I've got now than I did when I was 20. But no, you can develop these skills. You've got to have a mindset to say, I really want to develop them. But no, anyone can develop them. I'm a great, strong believer in that.
And when you teach dentists, how important is it when you teach the dentist or the dentist with his dental nurse and his front office, the office?
Yeah.
And so the individual, who's the most important person? And how do you like to train them, individually or
Yeah,
team?
no, I to be honest, I love teaching, I love training the whole team. If a dentist brings the whole team on my courses, or we go into their practices and deliver the programs to the whole team, it's just brilliant. And the reason is you can just get everyone singing off the same hymn sheet. You will know as well as I do, you've had some doctors who go on courses, they come back and they want to change everything, and the staff turn around and say, well, he'll be okay, he'll calm down in 3 or 4 days, and we'll just get everything back to normal again. Well, if you bring the whole team on, they also learn and develop the same philosophies, and everyone gets to sing off the same hymn sheet. So no, if you can bring the whole team on, it's absolutely brilliant. And there's been, I don't know, hundreds of occasions when we've had the shy, reserved nurse or the shy, reserved receptionist, and she's blossomed over 2 days, and she's become an outstanding treatment coordinator and been an absolute amazing asset to the program. I was with a practice last week in the West Midlands. We did a 2-day program down there, and the practice manager went through the whole program. And at the very end of the course, I actually turned around to the directors, in fact, with the practice manager, and said that she was wasted in the practice manager role because if she's spending more than 2 or 3 days doing administration, her best asset was to be in front of patients, communicating and developing the products and services that they can offer to the patients. So, no, in my opinion, if you can train the whole team, it's brilliant because you can get everyone singing off the same hymn sheet, and we can find rising stars.
So another very controversial thing that dentists wonder is a lot of dentists think, I can't be your loving, caring, concerned dentist with empathy and sympathy, and then the next breath talking money. So can you mix money? Can a doctor talk money, or is that what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, another good question, and long conversations in the night about this. Here's 2 rules of thumb here. We have some doctors, for example, let's say the practice doesn't have a treatment coordinator. So the patient comes in, they see the doctor or the dentist, and a treatment plan needs to be had or discussed. And then sometimes what happens is the dentist, who doesn't like talking money or discussing fees, will turn around and say, well, if you go back down to reception, the girl at the desk or little Nancy there, she'll go through your plan with you and she'll talk exactly what the fees are. Now, that's okay, but the challenge you've got is you've got the patient going down. Nancy then prints off this payment, the treatment plan with the costings on. And then the phone goes and she's got to answer the telephone. And then a patient walks in and she's dealing with the patient walking in. And all of a sudden, the patient who's looking at this, look at how much is all this, and he's got concerns about the fees. Well, you got to maybe a receptionist who's doing 3 or 4 things at once. And the other major downside to this is that she wasn't in the room, so she hasn't got a clue exactly what's been happening up there in the first place. So my rule of thumb is, it's okay if you've got a really good treatment coordinator who can then, who's not doing anything else but dealing with the patient, and then can discuss fees with confidence, go through the plan, and maybe has been in the room with the doctor, or maybe had a conversation beforehand, then I think that's a great way of doing it. The other alternative is, the doctor should be able to discuss fees with the patient. There's no harm, we're all in, my role and your role, we're all speaking to people, we're all communicating, and then we've got to discuss the fees at the end of it. So, rule of thumb, discuss the fees only if you've got a really good treatment coordinator who can do it for you. But do not send them down to the receptionist who's got to deal with it, because she might be dealing with 5 things at once.
How many books do you have on ashleyladder.com? I mean, there must be 4 or 5 books.
We've wrote 4. Well, I've been involved in 1 dental masters. The very first one came out, I don't know, maybe about 8-9 years ago, called Helping Patients Say Yes. But the latest 2 that we've got are the Don't Wait for the Tooth Fairy and You Are Worth It, How to Communicate Your Fees with Confidence and Achieve the Income your services deserve.
Will you go, and those are all on www.ashleyladder.com.
Yep.
Will you go over those 2 books and what my homies would
sure
to do a book review of those?
Book review. Okay, well, I've got them here. Okay. So the first one was this which is Don't Wait for the Tooth Fairy. That's that one there. Okay. And that basically is the perfect consultation. So it's short chapters. It goes through all my 8 steps on the program that I cover, from how to build rapport with the patient, how to ask the right type of questions to create opportunities, and I go through some of the questions that you should ask a patient when the patient comes through the door. We then go into how to explain the treatment plan and some of the language you should use and some language you shouldn't use, so focusing on what the benefits are to the patient. There's a little section there on how to discuss fees and what you should say and what you shouldn't say when you're quoting fees, using the words like investment rather than cost, what's included. And then there's a whole section on how to overcome objections. And I talk about 5 steps on how to overcome any patient's objections that they may have. Because you'll always get objections when patients turn around and say, well, that's expensive, or why does it cost that much? So there's a whole section there on how to overcome those objections. And then there's a section on how to, close the treatment plan off, make it, gain commitment from the patient, so the patient doesn't feel as like they're being closed. So there's a whole section on that. And then we're following up as well. So there's a whole section on what to do and how to follow up and how to get testimonial letters and videos for your practice as well. So it goes through the whole patient journey from sort of start to finish, all the steps. So, the dentist or the whole team members can know exactly what all those steps are. Before that, there's a whole section on some of the biggest communication mistakes that the dentists make as well. So that's what that book's about. And we called it Don't Wait for the Tooth Fairy because the Tooth Fairy never comes. Everyone expects miracles and things to happen, and it just is not the case. So that's why we came up with that name.
Yeah. What's your favorite Tooth Fairy joke? The Tooth Fairy is what teaches young kids that they can sell their body parts for money. How messed up is that? So again, can you just go through? Can you name the 8 steps?
Yeah. So it starts off with preparation. And preparation is everything that you are doing before the patient comes through the door. So do you want me to go through them a little bit by bit? So let's say preparation. Let's say, for example, in your practice, in Phoenix, your receptionist has taken an inquiry. She's filled out a sheet. She's got some background information. And then maybe the night before, when you're planning your next day, she's going through this information with you. So you know who exactly is coming in, what she's coming in for, what the challenges are, what the problems that they're coming in to see you about. So it gives you a chance to get ready, it gives you a chance to get your evidence or folders, or you know exactly what's happening. The next step is obviously the building of rapport. Because without rapport, you've got no trust. And we go through, a dozen things of how to build really good rapport with people, how to become genuinely interested, how to make a friend of the patient, so she feels ease or he feels ease, and there's like a good trust factor there. And then the next step after that is to ask questions to find out really what the patient's looking for. One of the biggest mistakes dentists make is that they make assumptions about the patient, what they can and cannot afford. They sell the treatment far too quickly. So what we cover there is how to ask lots of questions, how to ask lots of open-ended questions, so you can truly find out what the patient's problems are, what the issues and what the challenges are. Once you've done that, you can then summarize back to the patient what they've told you. And then the fourth step is, obviously they've got the examination, but the fourth step is how to provide solutions. How to talk benefits, how to explain what you do in a way that excites the patient and not avoiding the technical jargon. So we talk about providing solutions. There's a whole section there on evidence, how to put before and after pictures together, how to show testimonial letters and videos to back up exactly what you can offer the patient. And once you've done that, you discuss in the fees. We discuss how to quote investment rather than cost. Tell the patient what's included, so you're creating really good value for the patient. They can see what value they're getting back. And then we're just asking the patient, what did they think? And hopefully they come back and say, that's exactly what we want. And then we cover sections on gaining commitment, how to get that commitment from the patient. Dentists are very scarred, or traditionally, I'm generalizing a little bit here, but a lot of doctors and dentists are scared to ask the patient, would you like to proceed? They don't want to, they tend to give patients plans and say, go home and think about it. And we go through the whole section of how to gain commitment or get the patient to agree with what you're offering them. And once you've done that, you go through informed consent and go through the pros and cons. Treatment happens, and then the last part, number 8, is how you follow up with the patient. So I'm bringing you back just a few months after treatment, seeing how you're getting on, what's been happening. And obviously, hopefully you're delighted. Then we can get some really good testimonial videos. It's a great chance to get a video or a letter there, and ask for referrals. I know it's something that you teach and preach a lot in your courses and your presentation last week, and we do the same. It's just how to ask for referrals and how the patient then can go out and be your best ambassador. So in a nutshell, that's the whole book.
So are you a big fan of any technical aids? Some people really recommend intraoral cameras. Some like digital x-rays. Some like these patient education systems like Casey.
Yeah.
Are you into any? Does any of the high tech excite you, or is it? Or not really?
Yeah. There is some, but I've also seen one or two. I'm not quite sure I would want to use. I remember seeing one a few years ago where there was an implant and it showed the drilling in the bone and everything else. And I'm just not quite sure sometimes if you can show all that, you might put some patients off. So yeah, I think some of them can add real value, definitely. But I've got one or two I'm just not quite sure that I would.
Yeah, I imagine if I got the top killers and for males in America, for number 1 is prostate.
Yeah.
Number 2 is colon. I'm sure I would not want to see a video on how they're going to treat my prostate, testicular, or colon cancer.
Yeah.
And you know, and a lot of dentists they realize that if they see someone every 6 months, that's building the rapport and fostering a relationship. And I think one of the biggest opportunities they miss is that, technically speaking, when you do a root canal, you should take a 1-year post-op to make sure the periapial healed up, it's all doing well or whatever. And the endodontists all do it, but the general dentists don't do it. And there's a chance where every single person that you do a root canal could be scheduled to come back in to make sure it worked. And then you have a whole nother opportunity.
Yeah.
So then you wrote a second book.
I did.
And it's called You Are Worth It. Feel comfortable communicating your fees and achieve the income your services deserve. Talk about why you wrote a second book. Because writing a book's like having a child. I mean,
it's not easy.
It's a hell of a long.
Yeah, especially me as well.
It's a long 9 months.
It is. Yeah, it's it's like 1 hour per day for about a year.
Right.
You know, you got to really say, right, you know, the first part of the day, 6 till 7, I'm just going to go down to the office. I'm just going to write the, chapter, and that's how you do it, and including Christmas Day and stuff. But that's how I did it. So both books took about a year to write. The second book, You Are Worth It. Why I wrote the book was, I mean, more so I think in the UK rather than the US, to be honest. But I would say, it'd be fair to say, and I know I'm generalising a little bit, but I would say 90 to 95% of UK dentists who I've spoken to, who have had a beer with, who have taken part in my courses, have a real issue with discussing of fees with patients. And I think traditionally it comes back from the National Health Service of when things are being free. So 1 minute someone's saying free, and next minute they're saying 3,000. Big difference. So the reason why I wrote the book is a lot of dentists, like I said, I've had this challenge, and a lot of dentists I've spoke to devalue what they do. They don't feel like what they... Let me give you an example of what a lot of dentists will do. They will say the price of the treatment is, and let's say it's $1,000, they'll go $1,900. So in other words, they'll lose 100 in their head. So the treatment should be 1,000, but by the time it comes out of the mouth, it's 900. So they often do this. They have this real issue with the money. £500 by the time it comes out, it's 400, and I've actually seen it in abroad as well. And what the book really is about is about what you do is you change people's lives. What you do is you make a real difference. So don't undervalue what you do. And the whole book is about the whole psychology of charging what you're worth, charging the correct fees, and how to communicate it in a way that actually creates really good value for the patient. And the patient can see actually what you do is of significant value. So that's what really the whole basis of what the book is about. It's about 15 different strategies on how to discuss fees with confidence, and you're not devaluing what you do, and that you are charging the correct fees. Another thing, you see, let's say you've got 100 patients over a week, or over a period of time. You could give the fees to 100 patients, and 99 will just get the credit cards out or get the cash out and pay. You might have one patient who might turn around and say, "Gee whiz, am I paying for your car? Or am I paying for your holiday?" Like a sarcastic comment. It must have happened to you sometime in your life. Well, the average dentist, what they'll do is they won't remember the 99, but they'll remember the one patient who's given them this sarcastic comment. And what happens is, every time they want to charge a fee, or every time they want to discuss money, the one patient who's gave the sarcastic comment appears on the shoulder. And they get advice from that person there. Does that make sense? So they are listening to the one person. The other 99 paid. They were fine, hunky-dory, not an issue. But they were listening to the one patient who said the sarcastic comment. And what I'm saying is, and what the whole book is about, is to really how to discuss fees with confidence, how to charge what you're worth, and how to get it across to the patient so they think what you're providing is of significant value, which of course it is.
What I think is very funny is in the United States, the dentist will say, "Well, I can't raise my fees. My fees are too high." Yet, like the average root canal in the United States would be $1,000.
Yeah.
But in their same city, oftentimes in the same building, the specialist endodontist is in there, and they're charging $1,500.
Yeah.
And when everybody tells their patient how much the fee is, they pay. I remember one time I was sitting at a basketball game, which, by the way, I have to tell you, Greg and Ryan and I agree that the soccer sports fans of Europe
Amazing.
are at a whole different level. You ever see that in the United States at that level? I mean, it's just.
Have you had a few drinks in France? Have you?
Yeah, we were in Paris, and I mean, we were watching soccer games, and I watched the soccer game in the World Cup in Tanzania, and I mean, soccer fans are at a higher level than American NFL football and NBA
It's a different
basketball.
culture. Different culture.
My God.
Different culture.
It's a whole different level.
Yeah.
But we were sitting at a basketball game, and this dentist said to me, because his overhead was really, really high, and I said, your fees are just way too low. And he said, I can't raise my fees any higher. So we'd had a couple beers, and we, I think we were in like the 10th row or whatever, and I walked him up, and I walked him all the way around that America West Arena, pulling him behind me, and went to every single person and said, hey, we're just doing a survey. We're both dentists. How much money do you think a root canal cost on this tooth right here, the first molar? The lowest guess was $2,000. So he was at like $900. I was trying to get him to go to $1,000. The specialist in his same building was $1,500. The lowest fee guess going around the entire stadium was $2,000.
Yeah.
And some people were saying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah. See, it's interesting. If you ask the same question at an English soccer match, no one would have a clue.
What is that? What is that?
They'd probably say it's free on the NHS. Let me tell you a great story. And it's not a great story. It's just a real. And this is the big issue they have with the fees. And so, I was having a beer with a doctor, and this is about a year ago. And this is in South Manchester. Now, South Manchester is a really nice part of Manchester. It's where all the footballers live. It's where all the actresses, the musicians of Manchester, they all live in that part. It's a really nice area. That's
where you live.
I live in the north side. I'm not quite got there over that side yet. So I live in the hilly side. Now, I was chatting to a doctor, and he came up to me, and we were chatting for 2 hours. And this guy, I think, was ready to jump off the bridge. He really was depressed. He's having a really bad time. He had a really bad recession. And the income he was taking home was getting less and less and less. And he was talking about how long he's going to work. And he just was not enjoying his job anymore. And I turned around to him and I just said, this is one thing. And he wanted to take my course, but he just couldn't afford to pay it. And I asked him one question. The one question was this, Howard, are you ready for this? I said, when was the last time you raised your fees? And he turned around and said, I haven't raised my fees for about 6 to 7 years. I said, well, why is that? He says, well, one, we've had the worst recession in the UK. But the second thing is, none of my competitors in my town have done it. So I've been unable to raise my fees. So his whole mindset was because of the recession and because of his competitors. So who's he taking his business advice from? The average competitors in his town. And I just turned around and he shared his figures with me. If he just raised them the next day by 10, even 15%, you know as well as I will, all his patients would pay that. They wouldn't not know any different anyway. The second thing is it would make a significant impact, like overnight, to his cash flow and would get him out of the mess that he's in now. Obviously, he could afford to pay my course. And I said, just do it. And he gave me all the reasons why he just couldn't do it. And it's crazy. And the fees, not raising your fees for 7 years. And during that time in the UK, we've had so much bureaucracy being put on dental practices and everything else. His costs must have gone up by 70-80%, and he'd not raised his fees at all. And that's why he was in such a mess.
So, Ashley, we are from two different countries that share the same problem. The United States, 82 out of 100 dentists take these PPO plans. And they're discount plans, and they're 40% lower. They're called preferred provider organizations. When I got out of school, 95% of the British dentists, the UK dentists, took NHS.
Yeah.
How do you, because it's safety to sign up for the NHS. It's safety to sign up PPOs. But a lot of these dentists, they're realizing that they're doing a lot of dentistry for pretty much cost, no money. How do you convince them that do you really want to do free dentistry or dentistry for almost no margin? Or how do you, what are your thoughts on trying to get them to go more private? Or
Good question.
or do you not even recommend that?
I personally, I think it's down to the doctor or the dentist themselves to realise that they need to make a change, don't they? You know, I can speak to National Health Service dentists. I've got a couple of clients at the moment, and the more bureaucracy that's being thrown on, and I know PPO is the same. I think I heard a bit about your presentation last year. The fees are getting lower, and you're getting pushed and pushed and pushed. Well, you can only get to a stage where you wake up one day and say, well, why am I doing this? You know, am I actually enjoying the job? Am I actually enjoying and fulfilling and putting into the skills that I really wanted, that I learned, I spent, you know, thousands of pounds and hours learning? Am I actually fulfilling and enjoying my day doing this type of dentistry? And I think what happens is with doctors, they get through, they have to come up to the decision themselves. And I think it's over a period of time, it's this pain where I get more fed up, get more fed up. And then one day I wake up and say, do you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. So my advice to a dentist, when they're having these conversations, I say, well, okay, where are you on the pain scale? 1, it's not really a pain for you, or 10, are you there yet? Is that real pain where you're waking up each day? Now, if it's not an 8 or more, then you're not going to change, are you? You're going to keep carrying on. So if it gets to an 8 or 9, then what I say to a doctor is, look, go and climb a hill and decide what type of day you want. What's the day you want to have? What type of dentures you want to deliver? What type of patients do you want through the door? Do you want to be having this PPO or National Health Service bureaucracy filling out all these forms all day? Is that the type of dentistry you want to do? No? Okay, well then you've got to decide and make the change yourself. But they've got to come to the decision themselves, haven't they? And that's over, I think, a period of time.
I don't mean to embarrass you, but you were talking about bureaucracy, and we're having this lecture today, this podcast in the UK, in Glasgow, Scotland, when you're having a referendum today. Today, the UK is voting whether to succeed from the euro or not.
Yeah.
And you're never supposed to talk about religion or politics. So let's talk politics. And you just mentioned bureaucracy. Do you mind sharing how you voted or what your thoughts are on that?
I voted for staying in.
Okay. And what was your thoughts? Because Americans will only get, in an American newspaper, the entire news story will be one paragraph.
Yeah, I know that.
Or if it's on TV,
he won't even make it. He won't make it.
No,
it won't make it.
It'll be 30 seconds long.
Yeah. Why am I doing it? Selfish reasons. I'm actually doing, I'm doing a lot more work abroad now. A lot more income comes from abroad. I do a lot more work in Europe and things like that. And I think if we came out, I think it just make it a lot more complicated, and we'd have more forms. You know, it's the unknown. At the moment, we know exactly what's happening. I can go in and we can do trade. You know, and it's free, and it's all this big market that we've got. You know, it's at the site. You know, so I personally like this. If we leave, we're not quite sure what the unknown's going to be like. We're not quite sure what it's like to do work abroad. So that's the main reason why I decided to vote in. There's a lot of, let me tell you, there's a lot about Europe I don't like. You know, you go over there and you see what goes on. But I just think we're better as a part rather than being on our own.
Tell me if this is an ignorant from my American perspective, because obviously there's 7 billion people in the world, and I live on the side where only 1 billion live in the Western Hemisphere. You live on the side where the other 6 billion live. But from an American perspective, Europe had a couple of brutal wars last century. And I always wonder if, you know, they don't like the politics, but do you think keeping them together with Brussels so that they're arguing over the details daily lets steam out of the pie so that someday, you know, there's not another big war?
Well,
I guess let me ask this specifically.
Yeah.
Do you think the next century in Europe could be like the last century where everything's solved with a tank and a gun and a bullet?
You know, do you know what though? It's funny because we're having a few, because when you go out with your mates now, every conversation's about you're voting in or out. And one of my pals last week, over a few beers, it just turned around and said, well, if you think about it, the main advantage of being part of Europe is this has been the longest period of peace we've ever had.
Right.
You know, that's the main reason why we should be doing it, staying in together, which is a great point.
138 million Europeans killed in World War I.
Yeah, I don't know what the figures are.
I don't know. 138 million? So.
Don't know what the figures are, but since 1945, we're at 2016. That's a long period where we've had peace.
Yeah.
The only war that's going on now is in France between the football fans.
Huh. Yeah, that is amazing.
Did you say anything over there? No.
So, another thing Americans find bizarre about, or actually just when you go around the world, I think the most bizarre thing, money is the answer. What's the question? You go to a great civilization like Singapore. There's no dental insurance. Everybody pays for dentistry like they do their iPhone. You go to Tokyo, Paris, London. There's these government schemes, and they're so vastly different, and they're so bizarre when you talk to dentists like in Paris, and they say, "Well, I only get paid $100 to do a root canal." The United States charges $1,000, and when they're charging $1,000, they'll have $500 of overhead, and then you say to them, "Can you do a root canal for $100 and do it absolutely right and make money?" And 10 out of 10 will say, "No way." I mean, so some of these. Do you think some of these insurance schemes are open to modification or changing, or is that just the game people play?
Well, I can't comment for what goes on in some countries, but what I can say is I'm not quite sure of the figure, but I don't think it's a million miles away from $100. But I think under the National Health Service, I think UK dentists get paid that for doing a root canal.
Right.
Now, when they come on my courses, they often say to me, you know, they don't like doing it because it takes them a long time. They don't get paid enough for what they actually do, and you know, they complain, and they ask me, you know, can you share with me or how to sell them a private root canal? And I'd go through some tips with them, but I often say to them, you know, we can't say that, we can't say this, and all these restrictions, and I just say, look, if you're part of the National Health Service, it's like your wife. When you got married to her on the wedding day, there's 90% you love. There's always a little bit you're not quite sure about, or there's bits that you do irritate you, but you look at the whole sum, and there's most of it, hopefully, you enjoy and like and love. And that's what the National Health Service is like. This is what it is. There's lots there where you get paid reasonably well for what you do. There's some bits you don't get paid at all, but it's like your marriage. You like some of it, you love some of it, and there's some bits that you're not quite sure about.
I see that. My wife said she hated everything. my ex, she said there was nothing
yeah,
good.
My wife can give you a long list of things as well.
So does it mostly come down to demographics? If you're poor or rich, I mean, can someone get off the NHS in any area of the UK?
Yes, they can.
In any area?
Yes, they can.
Rich, poor, rural, city?
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, talk about that. Some of these dentists, they don't believe that's possible.
Yeah.
They think they're just indentured servants.
Well, I mean, we're here in Glasgow, and I've got lots of clients up here in Glasgow, and Glasgow's a traditional working class town, working class city. But a lot of dentists won't make the jump because they'll decide for themselves that their patients can't afford it, or they'll decide for themselves. They'll say, well, you know, that works in your area, Howard, but my area, my patients are completely different. And I think it's all down to two things. It's like, A, having the relationship with your patients. If you've got good relationships with you, they like you and trust you, they'll follow you. And the second thing is that if you are going to make a shift from National Health Service and to go private, and you're going to bring a maintenance plan in or anything like this, then I don't think you can just send a letter out and hope for the best. I think, maybe send a letter out, but when the patient comes in, explain why you're doing it, explain what the new, what it's going to look like in the future, but explain to the patient what the benefits are going to be for them and how they're going to benefit in the future. So if you do that and have a conversation with the patients, then, a lot of patients will follow you. If you've got 2,000 or 2,500 patients now under the National Health Service, will all 2,500 come with you? No, they won't. Because some of those will there'll be some that genuinely maybe can't afford £12 or £13 a month. There may be some of those who will have an entitlement. Well, I'm not going to do that because I'm entitled to something because it's free. But on the whole, the vast majority, what they'll find is that 1,500, 1,600 will come with you anyway. And they'll
1,600 out of how many?
Maybe out of 2,500. You should 2/3 will probably come with you.
1,500 out of 2,500.
But again, it depends on the relationship you got with the patients, and if you spend the time explaining to patients what they're going to get back in return and what the benefits are going to be.
So let's switch gears completely. Corporate dentistry. What's the status of corporate chain dentistry in the United Kingdom?
It's growing.
And do you think their business model is more successful than this individual solo practicing dentist? Do you think they're going to eat their lunch, or do you think what's your thoughts on corporate dentistry?
Well,
who's serving the customer better?
I'm not quite sure I can say that on camera.
No, you got to say it's Dentistry Uncensored.
Yeah. Do you know what? There's some. I work with some really, really good corporates who are top draw. The corporates are growing, like I probably are in the United States, and they're going to get grown bigger and bigger and bigger. I think for the practices that are left who aren't going to join corporates, they've got to be different. They've got to offer something completely different to what patients can't get in a corporate practice. You know, they've got to have a world-class journey, a world-class concierge service, something that's completely different to what they can get in a corporate. And if they do that, then they'll survive as well.
What were you gonna say? What were you gonna say, thinking when you said I can't say that on the podcast?
No, I think a lot of the corporates are. I think what's happening in the UK. I think the corporates are getting bigger, and they are, from what I can see, is the bigger corporates are negotiating the better National Health Service contracts.
Absolutely, that's what they're doing in America.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
The individual signs up for a PPO, and they have these low fees.
Yeah.
Then corporate comes in, and they say, "Well, I got 100 offices. You're going to pay me more."
Yeah.
So it's such a significant advantage.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be happening here as well.
So in a sense, the NHS,
in effect, the likelihood, it's going to be very difficult for a single practice to possibly deliver National Health Service dentistry and compete against the corporates. It's going to get even more difficult.
So are the corporates mostly going after the NHS government paid dentistry, or are they going after the more fee for service private?
Yeah, there's different ones. So there's some that are going after the National Health Service, and I work with some of the corporates who are buying more top-end private practices, and that's their marketplace. So each one has a bit of a niche, of what they're offering, and then as they're getting bigger and bigger, then they'll have their own certain niches within those. If that makes sense? But so there's different ones are after different.
Is your
different
stock market the FTSE? What's your stock market called in London?
The FTSE 100. Yeah.
The FTSE 100, or any of the corporate dental offices publicly traded?
Don't think they're in there yet. Maybe in the top 250, but I'm not quite sure. I don't think there was any in the top 100 yet.
But are there any publicly traded?
No, I think they're mainly all owned by fund companies.
Yeah, to me, that seems like a red flag. It seems like if you were making profit and you could grow de novo, build your own offices out of cash flow, they'd be wanting to take you an IPO in a minute, but you just don't see that. Which means, so when you say it's and it seems to also see that they, if they want to grow 1 million in sales, they got to grow their debt sheet $1 million and go buy some other office for $1 million. So they show me their outlandish growth, and I'm like, okay, but I'm looking at your balance sheet, and your balance sheet looks like the same graph.
Yeah.
So and you can't get anybody to publicly trade them. So, but the other red flag on that corporate is, because I'm old enough to see this round too. When I got out of school, Orthodontic Centers of America was on the New York Stock Exchange, or it does on NASDAQ, but they couldn't keep their doctors. There are corporate chains in America that their average doctor is less than 1 year.
Yeah.
Do you think you can grow a corporate dental chain and have a relationship-based business if your turnover of your doctors?
It's I'm not saying it's actually happening, but I think this is what. Well, you can see what goes on in UK corporates. I think a lot of UK. What happens is you've got. If I'm a dentist who owns my own practice, I've been self-employed all my life. and all of a sudden I'm selling out to a corporate. I spoke to those dentists. They find it very hard to work for someone else when you work for yourself for so many years. So they might hang around for 2 or 3 years. Once the 3 years is up, then they're off. I think what I'm seeing with a lot of corporate dentists is that a lot of dentists who work for the corporates are, not UK dentists. They're from the East Europeans. So,
What countries are they mostly from?
Mainly Poland, a lot of Romania, Hungary, Czech, Spanish, Portuguese.
Which is why a lot of people want to pull out of the euro in the UK. They don't like the wage competition with Eastern Europe.
That is, if you do speak to people who want to leave, typically it's a lot of older people or the elderly people who want to keep Great Britain great again, that type of thing. But the other type of people you do see who want to leave the UK are people where labour's come in from Europe and it's affected their job and has brought the wages down, and they find it very, very hard to compete. So it was interesting, 5-6 years ago, Polish builders would undercut UK builders, and now Polish builders are being undercut by Romanian builders. So it's a whole, I don't know if it's like that in the States, but it's certainly happening here. So yeah, if you speak to the people who want to leave the UK, typically are elderly people who want to, keep Great Britain great, and let's keep it like that and separate ourselves. But a lot of would be people in low-paid jobs who, it impacts them when the labour from Europe comes in.
In your lecture, you also seem to really, the dentist is looking into that root canal. I'm a dentist. I love that. And, Dr. Michael Gow downstairs has a global microscope to find that extra canals. And there's just no greater rush than pulling out an impacted wisdom teeth and finding that fourth canal. That's the coolest thing in dentistry. But when that dentist is doing that, she has no idea how this new patient is experiencing the new patient experience. Mm. And you talk a lot about that. What do you think that dentist, when they're looking down the bowels of a tooth, is not aware of on a complete stranger calling their office, and how that new patient is experiencing the new patient experience? And how can that dentist back there improve the new patient experience? Or how would she even be able to monitor if she has a great new patient experience or not?
Yeah. Oh, that's about 4 questions in one.
Well, my questions are so horrible that I usually throw out 5 or 10, hoping that one of them is good.
Do you know what?
And you'll bite on one of them.
Okay. Do you know what? Here's the deal, Howard. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to listen to how the receptionist answers the phone calls. So you've got to do mystery shops, or you've got to record them. You've got to be able to see or hear what is being said at the desk. Because the person at the desk, she or he, whoever that person might be, they make or break whether the patient comes through the door or not. So you need to record the calls. You need to be analysed, and then they need to be trained, obviously.
Will you just stop and technically? How do they record the calls? That's what they're thinking. How do you record the calls?
Well, you can get companies to record the calls for them. I'm trying to think at the top of my head who they are, but there's lots of companies who will do mystery shops, or you just actually record the calls. You get a facility where you can record your calls, and then you can review them and see what's been said and what's not been said. So that's the first thing you got to. Every practice should record what's going on, or see what's going on, or do mystery calls themselves, or get other people to see what's going on as well. The other thing is, we always talk about world-class patient journey and world-class, what it should be world-class like. I often say, unless you go to somewhere like Disney, where you do really see it really is world-class, or, Ruth Chris, the restaurant in the States, which I've been to a few times. So I often say to a dentist, unless you take your staff to a top-end restaurant in your town, where the service is absolutely immaculate and world-class, they don't know what world-class looks like or sounds like or actually experience it. So take them to an environment where it is truly world-class, so they can see for themselves exactly what it's like, and then they can come back, and then they can start putting ideas from what they've learned from other businesses into their own business as well, their own practices. We had an orthodontist in Cardiff, a remarkable client. unfortunately is no longer here anymore. But one of the things that he was an
Passed away?
orthodontist. Yeah. But one of the things he did was he ran a very, very successful orthodontic practice, world class. We did 5-6 years of training every 6 months while I was in there, and he became a very dear friend. But one of the things he did was, when they reached a private target, every year he took his staff to the American Orthodontic Conference, and one of the things that they did was he sent his staff for he paid for everything. He paid for the flights, he paid for the hotels, he paid for the dresses. He said, go out, buy yourself a dress, because we're going to go to the top-end restaurants. And he took them to the really good restaurants. It was like a 6-7 days. And one of the things that he insisted is that when they come back, team meeting, we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss what you learned from all the training courses you went on. But when we went to these restaurants, what did you learn? What did you pick up? What can we take away from there and put into our own business as well? And his business just got better and better and better. But, if he didn't do this, his staff wouldn't know what world class looks like or sounds like. They don't go to those places. They might not get paid.
Just for our Irish listeners, will you explain the difference between a pub and a restaurant?
Well, unfortunately, there's the pubs in the UK. If they don't serve food now, they just won't survive.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're closing down. In my town, in my small town, there would have been, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 pubs on the high street, 1 mile. If there's 3, that's it. And if they don't serve food, they won't survive. I think there's one drinking pub, a very cheap beer where you get the working class guys going in straight from work and that type of thing. But unless they're serving really good food, they won't survive. Not in the UK.
How can my homies learn more about you? What would you recommend them do? Go to ashleyladder.com.
Well,
they could buy your books.
There's books, CDs, there's DVDs there.
And by the way, there's 2. Okay, continue. There's 2 books. There's CDs.
Yeah, there's a couple of DVDs. But we're just about to, Howard. In about 3 weeks' time, the 2-day ethical sales and communication course and the reception course, for the very first time, I'm going into a studio to record both programs as a download, because we've been asked to do this. I've got to say, I was quite embarrassed. I went to Australia a few months ago to deliver one of my courses out there in Sydney. And at the end, we had a few DVDs, and the people snapped them up, and these 4 guys come up to us and said, what's a DVD? They didn't know what a DVD was. We don't have a CD player in our car. Have you got it as a download? So it was a bit of a lesson there for us that we need to go. So we're going into the studios, and I'm going to record both those courses as an online. I'm actually going to record them as after having given the course in real life, so doctors can download it and we can train the whole staff as if I'm in their staff room delivering the course. So that's happening, so that should be up and running in about 2 months' time. But yeah, there's books, DVDs, and we've recorded about 60 separate videos there on the YouTube channels. There's lots of tips there and stuff like that. So there's just hundreds of articles. There's loads of stuff. ashleylatter.com.
I remember when my littlest boy, Zach, I believe it was, he's born in 89, 91, 95.
It's every 4 years, isn't it, with your kids, is it?
It's what?
Every 4 years?
I had 4 boys in 60 months.
Right.
But it was 2005. He was 10 years old, and he came in my room and said, "Dad, what's a CD?" And I said, "A CD, that little disc thing." He said, "No." And it's that little. So I thought, well, I'll just show him one. And I couldn't find one in the house. I mean, I looked at every single, and it's like, my God, the kid didn't even know what a CD was. He was born after the CD.
And did you show him a vinyl?
That was one of my largest regrets. I'm having a huge dilemma right now because when I got out of dental school, the last 10 albums I had bought was a CD. So I didn't want to lug 2 orange crates of vinyl from Kansas City to Phoenix. So I just gave them to my roommate.
Don't you wish you kept them?
Oh, my God. Well, now I have the same dilemma because in my office, I have these 3 big wooden bookcases of every book I've ever read that was, it's all nonfiction, it's great classics. And I never, ever look them back up because if I'm want to know a quote or something like that, it's faster to go to Google and type in, the deal and pull it up there than to go find a book and open up. But I just cringe at throwing them away because I'm so scared about throwing away all my albums.
I had the Police, I can't remember what it was now, but they bought them out in green vinyl. You remember the Police, the punk group, and I had them in green vinyl.
Sting and the Police?
Yeah. And I had those, and they'd be worth a fortune now. And look at Blue Monday by New Order, the original sleeve. And
I can still remember when the Police was greater than U2.
Yeah.
And that's a classic business example because the interpersonal fighting, they fell apart.
Yeah.
And the neatest thing about bands like U2, the Rolling Stones, is that 5 complex people fighting substance abuse, drinking, drugging, crazy behavior. I'm talking about the Rolling Stones. I'm not saying U2.
Yeah.
But how they were able to keep it together for 3 decades.
Yeah.
You know,
We went
just
to
think of the egos involved in those groups.
There's a group in Manchester called the Stone Roses. I don't know if that name rings a bell. Stone Roses. They're one of the biggest groups in Britain for years, and they were around in 1983. In the 1980s, and they made 2 big albums, and then they split up, and they formed again 4 years ago, and they've just had 6 sellout concerts in Manchester, 65,000 people at each one of those concerts because they just reformed. And you just think if they would have kept together for all that period of time, how much and how big they could have actually been.
Being able to work through your problems, your differences, and to realize that the whole.
Because we went the other night and we just could not believe the crowd there. I mean,
who was that other big British band who he said something bad about the Queen and they banned him from playing?
Oh, the Sex Pistols.
Pistols?
Johnny Rotten.
Yeah, but there was another one too.
Sid Vicious.
Sid Vicious, but the other one. Who was the other one? The 2 brothers. One brother was the lead singer and one brother was the lead guitar.
I can't remember. And he said something about the Queen.
Yeah, he said something about the Queen and they wouldn't let him play at any stadiums. Oh my gosh. Oasis.
Oh, Noel Gallagher and the Gallagher brothers.
Yeah,
they're from Manchester, you know.
Yeah, I mean they were banned from playing at stadiums for years, weren't they?
No, I don't think they. I mean, they split up. Oasis were together for years, but they split up. Liam and Noel because
he was a hardcore drinker.
I don't know. They just didn't get on, and now Noel Gallagher's on his own now, and Liam's got his own band. But Noel Gallagher's doing really well without Liam. Yeah. Oasis, they're from Manchester.
Liam was the lead singer.
He was.
And
Noel Gallagher was the yeah. Did you like Oasis?
So I also want to tell you the last thing is there's 278 dental societies that hire speakers for dental meetings in the United States. I mean, the United States is actually the same size as China or Australia. Australia, China, and the United States are all the same size. It's a huge country. I'm telling you guys, this guy has been doing his 2-day program for decades to sell out audiences all over the UK and this area in Europe. Tell them that you want to speak at their next meeting. Do you like going to the United States?
I'm going in. It's really interesting. I came off the phone last night. We're going over to Chicago in August to deliver a 2-day program to 70 doctors, 6 practices together. So I'm going over in August. I'm going over in Florida in October. We're speaking at the 6 Month Smile conference there. At Florida, and then in Florida.
How long is your lecture at the 6 Month Smile conference?
I think we're doing 2 hours there, doing a 2-hour lecture, and then I've been asked to present for some is it the Maddow Brothers in Vegas in November. So
this November.
So I'm going 3 times between.
So
now
how long are you speaking of the Maddow Brothers?
I think I've got an hour on the first day.
You know, I'm the I have the championship record at the Maddow Brothers. I think when they had 14 meetings, I had lectured at 11 of them. But anyway, No one has spoke more.
Right.
So go TBSE, go Rich and Dave Maddow. They used to have me every year come to Vegas. How many times do you remember going to Vegas for the Maddow Brothers? I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, we'd go there every year. But that's a great group of people.
Yeah.
Basically, Americans, when you get them out of their farm country hoedown and you get them to Las Vegas, I mean, good church women, proper women show up in leotards and high heels, and they're ready to go drink and tear up the town, and they are so fun in Vegas.
Yeah. No, so I'm looking forward to it. So 3 times between now and then, but so it's every time I go over, I have a great time. It's good.
So if a dental society was thinking about you, what do you like to do? You like to do a 2 hour, half day, full day, 2 day? What's your sweet spot?
My sweet spot really is, I like a 2-3 hour lecture, something like that, where we can really deliver some stuff on ethical sales, and we can make it fun and very entertaining as well. And if you can bring the whole team along, we can get them and have a lot of fun and get them motivated.
Well,
and inspired.
if you're ever going to the United States, there's a nonstop from London to Phoenix. But if you're ever going to the United States or whatever, and you want to do some type of deal, however you want to do it, in Phoenix, believe it or not, Phoenix has 4 million people, so it's a real town.
Yep.
And I'm sure the Phoenix homeboys would love to see you. But thank you so much
No,
for
it's been
spending
good
an
to see
hour
you.
with me, Ashley.
No, thank you. Fully enjoyed it.
AshleyLadder.com. Check it out.